National Industrial Court, and how binding is it?
Well, thank you for having me. Of course, the decision of the National Industrial Court is binding on all authorities and persons throughout the Federal Republic of Nigeria by virtue of Section 287 of the Constitution. The armed forces, which has three components, the Navy, the Air Force, and the Army, they are agencies of government, they are institutions of government, and they are bound by the Constitution. They are creations of the Constitution. They are subjected to the Constitution. They are subjected to the jurisdiction of the courts established by the Constitution. So the question of whether they will be bound doesn't even arise, because even under military regime, and this is the point that we must continue to stress, court judgment, even the military, were even sometimes more open to obeying decisions of courts. So on this issue, the court has taken a position, and this has been the jurisprudence of the National Industrial Court on this issue, that, look, you cannot simply say that because someone has offered to wear the uniform to serve his country, therefore, by fire, by force, at gunpoint, that the person must continue to serve Nigeria. What the Industrial Court has done is logical, it is just, by simply restating that, look, by virtue of Section 306 of the Constitution, which is the basis upon which I went to court on behalf of my client, every public officer or every person elected, appointed, or is selected to an office appointed or created by the Constitution or recognized by the Constitution has the right to resign at any time. And that resignation is effective upon the receipt of the letter or the correspondence communicating that person's intention to resign. So what has happened in this particular case is a very sad example of the extent of injustice, the extent of the moral depravity, the abominable repression that the institution of the armed forces of Nigeria, has represented, particularly on this case. This is a man, my client, who joined the armed forces through the ADA, the Nigerian Defense Academy. He was selected in his final year in 2013, among the best in his set. He was selected for a course in the United States to be trained as a fighter pilot. While in the US, his allowances were not paid for about 5 months. In July 2014, he was suddenly recalled back to Nigeria without any explanation, thereby truncating what was supposed to be his opportunity for career progression. As if that was not enough, the authority of the Air Force, for about a year after they recalled him from the US from his course, did not assign him to any unit. They just left him hanging. Yes, and then he remained on one course as a flight officer for about 6 years, which is supposed to ordinarily be about 4 years. He was not promoted. His classmates were promoted. And let me also mention to you that series of actions were taken and targeted at this gentleman, clearly showing that the authorities of the Air Force did not want him for reasons best known to him. The other part of the reason why he had to insist on resigning was that his own father served Nigeria in the army. His mother just retired just a few years ago as a senior officer of the Nigerian army. So this is a man who joined the armed forces based on a family history of devotion to the Nigerian armed forces. But guess what? The Nigerian army dealt ruthlessly with his father. His father's property, very close to the American embassy, Walter Carrington, where he had these boats that, that place was leased to him by the Nigerian Inland Waterways. He has done this business over the years. Some nefarious elements in uniform, including generals, out of greed, personal pursuits, attacked this man's business, set fire on his boat, chased his worker out. But this was somebody who served the army. Someone that the Inland Waterways had given license to do business. He had not trespassed on the property of the army, but people in the army had business interest in his business. Destroyed his business, set everything on fire. He went to court and won them. The court ordered the army to vacate the place. The army refused. The officials of the court went to enforce the judgment. They were beaten and chased away. The army went on appeal. The appeal was lost. In 2017, I personally wrote a petition on behalf of Chief Akerele to the House of Reps. The House again passed a resolution, ordered the army to vacate the property and pay him 100 million. Again, they flattered that resolution. So while we were still fighting for Chief Akerele died without getting justice. His son, who was in the Air Force, is also being subjected to the same vicious victimization. He could no longer take it. And he said, look, I have served for almost about 10 years. I don't need pension. I'm not asking you for, and by the way, in our claims in court, we didn't ask for pension. We didn't ask for anything. We did not ask for a cover from the Air Force. We simply said, look, this man had undertaken interest in civilian endeavors. Allow him to go. They said, no. What did the chief of army staff did? He issued a signal for his arrest, declared him a wool. Guess what? Nigerians should know. In this case of Flight Lieutenant Akerele, do you know that when he applied for voluntary retirement to exit service, to disengage, he was subjected to counseling. He was interviewed. His own commander who interviewed him, who counseled him, wrote recommending that they should allow him to go, that he can no longer contribute to the service. He had become demoralized. We even exhibited before the court an official position by the chief of defense staff directing that any member of the armed forces who is not motivated and no longer has interest should be allowed to go. Guess what? Despite the recommendation of his commander and the officers who counseled him, on record, this info before the court, the chief of A staff still insisted that this gentleman should continue to serve. So it was on this premise that we said, look, that we cannot live in a situation where you will treat a Nigerian as if he's in a plantation, as if he's in a Nazi concentration camp. Because what they are telling us is that once you accept to wear the uniform to fight for Nigeria, to defend Nigeria, even if your life is at stake, you cannot live. We went to court to file this action. And they came to court to say, the heading of the letter was voluntary retirement. It was not resignation. The court said no. We even cited a case to show that in the past, the Court of Appeal has said that, look, even when you say it is voluntary retirement, what the court must look at is the content of the letter. So the court interpreted the content of the letter and said, look, this man had clearly expressed the intention that he had no longer interest to serve. And the court went further yesterday, very interestingly, to declare the provisions of what they call HTACOS, the Harmonized Terms and Conditions of Service for Personnel of the Armed Forces, that says that an officer must serve for at least 15 years before you can disengage. The concept is unconditional. And that was our argument. And that is a correct position. Because if you say you must serve for 15 years before you can disengage, it becomes slave labor. It becomes slave labor. And it is not a case that Nigeria is at war, that you say you are conscripting people like we have in between Russia and Ukraine now. So what is the basis for insisting that whether you like it or not, you must serve Nigeria? Meanwhile, the generals in the defense headquarters who are stealing billions meant for the welfare of soldiers. Soldiers that cannot feed, soldiers that are not given uniform, soldiers that are not given arms to fight insurgents. We have seen some videos come out. Those soldiers, how many of them have been prosecuted? So you must address the welfare of officers. You cannot simply say you are not going to allow people to resign from service when you don't look at their complaints of victimization. Our soldiers are dying, our soldiers are underpaid, our soldiers' welfare are not catered for. This is a welcome judgment that is again made it clear that in this country there is still hope for justice.
Which is well good. So how it took an aggrieved Flight Lieutenant Akerele to challenge the service rule due to his denial of the resignation. So what lessons can we draw on that regarding one's ability to uphold your human rights, through the courts? There's always this hopelessness and this feeling of not getting justice being done. Well, we're seeing something significant here. Your thoughts?
The court is still the last word of the court. There is no alternative to judicial redress. The option available other than seeking redress in court is to resort to self-help. And that will take us back to the Stone Age, where life is short, nasty, and brutish. The survival of the fittest. We cannot live in that society. So the judiciary has its own challenges, but the judiciary is still the hope. If we did not go to court, what would have happened? They had issued 2 signals for his arrest. They were targeting him. What is his offense? He's not asking them for pension. He's not asking them for disengagement benefits. He didn't ask them for anything. Yet, they denied him promotion. They denied him his training, cost allowances. They even brought him back from the course that he went for. Repeated victimization. And he now left. So we had to go to court. And the judge even used very strong language to deprecate the conduct of the Nigerian Air Force. We cannot tolerate this kind of irresponsibility. The armed forces should be the most respected institution in a country. It should live above board.
Very good, Inihibe. Now, when you took up this case, did you have that confidence that Flight Lieutenant Akerile's prayer will be answered in his favor? You know, despite all the challenges we've been having when it comes to litigations of this kind of nature, you think?
You know the other interesting thing about this case? Do you know the other interesting thing? This matter, it will find in action in 2025. And let me give you the opportunity to completely make the escape of the president and the judges of the National Industrial Court today is beginning to position itself as one of the most efficient courts in Nigeria. So you can see the speed at which this matter was determined. No delay. And then the judgment is also very sound. My Lord, Honorable Justice Manuel, in reading this judgment, even relied on international instruments to which Nigeria is signatory. That is against forced labor. You see the industry, the level of research put into the judgment. You commend the learned judge. So I believe that at the end of the day, Nigerians must continue to explore judicial remedy. Because what were we going to do? I was not going to carry a play card as his lawyer and say, let us go to defense headquarters and confront the chief of air staff. I wasn't going to do that. I wasn't going to do that. I've just narrated to you what they did to his father. The Nigerian army contributed to the death of Chief Akerele. And the blood of Chief Akerele could continue to be on the hands of the Nigerian army. They had a hand in his death. This was a man who fought for Nigeria. A man who wore the uniform. His wife wore the uniform, fought for Nigeria. His own son joined the air force. Yet, they bastardized his life, they ruined him, disobeyed court orders, disobeyed the House of Reps, as if Nigeria is a banana republic. And you are saying that despite what I've done to your father, despite what I'm now doing to you, to demonstrate to Nigeria that it is possible to stand up to the powers that rule in this country. It is possible to go to the court and demand redress and sue and then the court will give justice. That is what this case has demonstrated. But let me also quickly say something to the commander. Because at the end of the day, the armed forces is still subject to the president.
I don't know if you go watch all this one for bit.
Even this 15-year rule they are talking about, it used to be 10. Some people just sat down and say, increase it to 15.
I want to read this one.
It is not.
Now, forget the details.
Harmonized terms and conditions of sale. A regulation that was issued.
Go laundry now. Which one be you want? Go laundry.
It is unconstitutional. The court has nullified that particular provision yesterday. They don't retire again. I am telling the president of Nigeria, that's
Man, I'm going to work out.
I go myself.
I go set iron for you.
rank and file and dying in silence. If I tell you the number of soldiers that reach out to me about the injustices they are facing, you'll be amazed. So how do you expect them to be motivated to fight Boko Haram, to fight bandits, to fight the terrorists in the east that are killing people, when their own welfare is not addressed? Soldiers are among the most oppressed people in Nigeria. It is the generals that are living fat, that are taking all the money. The people that are actually doing the actual work, most of them are suffering. And nobody hears them. You know why? You cannot protest. They will say it is mutiny. So the
rubbish is for that. They are not correct. Show me the last side. People that are not correct.
Also, they talk to. They don't talk to. They'll go to. They'll talk to them tomorrow. They go match their office.
Now noise. Not a day. On social media.
This case,
Nothing to grab for street.
the outcome, impact of the Aki release, still in the service.
well, you see, the court demonstrated that one.
Now to make them for social media. Now they know.
This is a principle of law.
If the rich shit become real now, you know, see them.
Opposing argument cannot be taken. That when you are interpreting the provisions of the are faced with whether to give a vote or a provision a wider or a narrower meaning, you must always leave to the wider.
Young man.
So when the court have to construe what legislation is within the purview of section 306, the court rightly held that look, even if you use the heading voluntary retirement, once that letter that you are using to express your intention to certificate clearly shows that you no longer have interest in serving, it is interpreted as resignation, and that is correct. That is reasonable. Because what is the intention of the framers of section 306? The armed forces is a creation of the constitution, section 217. So under officers who have reasons to leave, they have the right, they can resign anytime. And the solution is not to say, oh, everybody is going to resign from the armed forces. The question Nigeria's armed forces, the chief of army staff, chief of naval staff, chief of air staff, and chief of defense staff must answer today. Why are officers seeking to resign? Address those concerns if you want them to remain in service. You cannot use AK-47 and point it at officers' faces and say save Nigeria by fire by force without addressing grievances.
Apparently, this case is a landmark case, and it's also a pace setter.
Of course it is.
Young lawyer, would like to thank you very much for your contributions. More wins in that regard.
Thank you.
Joining me now is the national coordinator of the obedient movement. It is a glad to have you join me on a Rise Prime Time.
Thank you for having me. Good evening, Nigerians.
Yeah, it was late Alhaji.
Maybe because I look outside, I can't look inside.
After the local government elections, the state and Nigeria are with the return of democracy in Rivers State.
That bad party. When they work for Jonathan thief money, I say they sign them up and I'm very stupid man.
Is said.
A lawyer I be, I don't say a lawyer I be, but
This is a chapter of the All Progressives Congress.
I never like to hear the guy
has
again and
committed to
nonsense.
cooperating with the governor on his return. The state APC chairman, Chief Tony Okocha, assured that the party is ready to work with Fubara when he resumes office, but also said the party won't relent in holding Fubara accountable despite agreeing to work with him. Joining us on this show to discuss the prospects of the restoration of democratic structures in Rivers State, the outcome of the just concluded council is Abang Victor, former governor of Akwa Ibom State. Good morning, sir. Can you hear me?
Good morning, Robert. Yes, I can hear you.
Good morning, sir. Welcome to the morning show.
You cannot get
26 countries say
they now enter there.
the situation
I just say,
government elections
I'll clean everything out before we do
by
ceasefire.
a sole administrator
Everything will
who
finish.
was not elected by the people. The unelected sole administrator swearing in local government chairman.
Say they come
And
and
then
check
now
to
the
Russia.
APC winning.
Yeah, I try to Russia. Now, what I do? Russia don't even want to make una reach the ground. When I say now, after the war, now enter security there.
Russia. Now check to Russia.
Work with them.
Because if you come bring that thing, they say make a net to no enter. You say after the war you can't call security. Yeah, now when it cause the war, not call security. Now when enter there, Russia not agree. Now na cause the war, make them fight there. No, una not the hungry now, they want see. Now no see nothing. The guy don't tell you he will take everywhere. Nothing, don't let it talk nothing. Nothing they happen. I always say the boy make mistake, the stupid idiot puppet. They use them and they don't use them and they don't feel like
It's not France. It's not France.
Remember there was a man called Ghanaian.
Those two guys not get leg.
and they don't blow UK building.
UK not get leg.
UK building.
France not get leg.
They're about the
I
embassy for
Germany
that side.
90 strokes more for all those
They
people.
blow
When he
everywhere.
arrived,
Those Germany not come out.
certainly
UK
the
will not get
devil has
anything.
entered Nigeria.
No, but Russia don't carry gas
And I
and this
think
thing.
he
Those
was
kind of
right.
China.
And that
China will
devil
set Russia.
included,
Europe
also
will struggle.
Yes, because now Germany give
Vanguard
before.
newspaper
Then give the contract to.
by,
Yeah. Then they give the America still say the thing don't make German and Russia close. They get to scatter. Then they enter. Then they use that Ukraine to scatter everywhere. Make what they do with them. Because they come together, the America will fall.
But the man where not collection there's them.
agree that
One of the
that
parties
devil
to send our only
seemed to have
When
arrived
for don't
saying no
follow.
send you.
in the form of
If
a
it come from
president
you. Russia,
cloaked
that's
with
the
the
difference.
toga of
When a coalition party, America. It's not only that one
What
party.
I mean by
Puppets.
that
They
is
not
that
send them.
if you have a situation in which everybody says this thing is wrong, this should not be clear, this should not be done this way, and somebody goes ahead and does it, and nothing happens, and maybe the devil gradually is taking over Nigeria. And that's why we are insisting that there has to be a system to keep the devil out of Nigeria. It's not any one person, because this started way back in 1999. And I remember you the party right now.
No, but that is the devil, because when they kill people, they'll go and say, when they kill for this village, they don't send police go there, and I know send go there. People they carry back the run, see just people they run up and down from back beside village. But I'm saying I get
the situation in Nigeria is not good. And my reason for saying so is because the reasons are obvious. But I think the one cure that we could have would be to accept the fact that we've deviated from what we agreed should be Nigeria. We agreed that Nigeria should be a federation, and we know all the ingredients of federalism. That's not unknown to anybody that's interested in politics. But we have killed all those things and replaced them with something else entirely. So if you want to come specifically to River State, yes, everybody says what happens is an affront. First of all, we went as pioneers, met the president, we assured him that Fubara had fully agreed to cooperate with the Supreme Court judgment, and but before anything could happen, a state of emergency was declared. Even before a bill was taken to the National Assembly. So we just doing things not the way that even this faulty constitution prescribes. And if you look at the elections, I'm not looking at it in terms of who won how many seats, but how was the election conducted. Yes, even INEC said the elections should not have been held when they were held, because a certain minimum number of days should come before or announcement ahead of an election. We don't wait for the number of days. And so we just operating as though there is no constitution. And by past, because everybody recognizes the fact that this constitution is just something that we should throw away and replace with something better. Without monopolizing too much of your time, because you must have other questions. Maybe I should stop there until you also reflect on what I've said so far.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, sir. Always great to have you.
Politics in the PDP that never ends. Wike camp PDP governors on collision course over convention. Wike camp PDP governors on collision course over convention. So there's been this, on one hand it was national secretary position, on the other hand zoning to the south. Now they are saying don't microzone it. What do you make of this back and forth? It looks like for every hurdle cross, another set of obstacle is being created within the party.
Well, it's unfortunate, and it's becoming clearer to most Nigerians that the PDP does not have external problems. That the problem the PDP has is basically internal. And the minister of the FCT, Wike, is a man I've come to respect, because I live in the FCT and I can see the work that he does here. A lot of work, a lot of construction is going on. He has sought to, to rewrite the underdevelopment history of the FCT, and to that extent, most residents of the nation's capital, he did applaud Wike, but his politics is stinking to high heavens. I do not subscribe to the Wike brand of politics. Nigerians suffer so much, to best the current democracy that we're having. Any attempt to destroy multi-party democracy and democratic pluralism, it is not going to be accepted by Nigerians. We need the PDP to be strong. We need other political parties to be strong to provide, alternative platform to voters in 2027. Now, the PDP has managed to settle its, national organic squabble. They had a lot of squabble at the national level, national leadership of the party. Somehow, when the party was written off, by people, who felt that the PDP was dead, the PDP was managed to reinvent itself, and then the leadership issue has been settled. Now, last night I watched Wike host his former allies, Governor Otom of former Governor Otom of Benue State, Ifeanyi Ukwaye of Enugu State, former Governor of Ekiti State, and a couple of them in his private residence in Abuja, where they took that decision. And like fresh requests that once those requests are not met, then the convention taking place in Ibadan,
you try to drink more water.
It will not be able to complete that. The courts will nullify it. It means that they are presenting fresh challenges, fresh hurdles before the PDP, and you could see what the response is coming from the leadership of the PDP. The national chairman of the PDP, Umar Damagu, is talking tough for the very first time. I used to think that he's a very weak leader, but from what he's saying, he's talking tough. Ahmad Fintiri, who is the chairman of the convention planning committee, the governor of Adamawa State, is also talking tough. He represented the chairman of the board of trustees of the PDP, Wabara, and they are saying that now it is time for a pushback and actually to discipline every members of the party who will not fall in line. So these new conditions that is being said by Wike and his allies, I think more Nigerians are going to be disgusted with it. It is no longer acceptable. We should encourage other parties to grow so that we have alternative. We can have alternative in 2027. That is the way to go. Nigeria is the biggest black nation on earth, and our democracy is thriving. People putting spanners in the work, I think that is not encouraging. That is not the way to go. They should be discouraged and they should be called out. Wike and his allies. For me, this morning, I think enough indeed is enough.
At the 2027 polls, addressing members of TBO, Tinubu declared that his government had met its revenue generation target for 2025 through the non-oil sector in August, stressing that this was achieved ahead of schedule. He added that he would remain focused on Nigeria's progress despite external pressures, including actions from US President Donald Trump. Shedding more light on his government's economic achievements, the president emphasized the stabilization of the Nigerian economy, with exchange rates improving from 1,900 naira to $1 to 1,450 naira at present. Moving on, tensions are rising once more in the People's Democratic Party as governors of the opposition party have threatened a showdown following fresh demands from the FCT minister Nyesom Wike and his loyalists. The new conditions tied to the party's much-anticipated convention is set to deepen divisions and set the stage for a fierce internal battle. Members of the PDP loyal to Wike came up with fresh conditions for the conduct of the elective national convention of the party slated for Ibadan, Oyo State. Specifically, the Wike's camp said it was opposed to any micro-zoning of offices of the National Working Committee, against the permutations to allow some NWC members to transform to new positions. Wike and his loyalists insisted that the office of the national chairman must be retained in the North Central. This is in an apparent response to the conditions given by the camp of the Minister of the FCT, National Chairman of the PDP, Ambassador Ilia Damagum, yesterday declared that the National Convention was sacrosanct. In the same manner, Chairman of the PDP Governors Forum and Governor of Bauchi State, Senator Bala Mohammed, stressed that there was no faction within the party, adding that, in his words, if anyone wants to join a faction of fools, we will allow him. End of quote. Wike and his allies have been at loggerheads with the NWC and the PDP governors over the convention, saying the conditions must be met for the peaceful conduct of the convention.
Senator Makura, former governor of Nasarawa State, they met with the president yesterday at the State House. Also in attendance was former governor Masari of Katsina State. Also in attendance is the Speaker of the House of Representatives, the Right Honorable Tajuddin Abbas. And what did they go there to do? Okay, there are other persons I've seen there. The Niger State Governor was also there, Farmer Bako of Niger State. They went there to pledge loyalty to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and to tell him that in every state where the Buhari organization is represented, TBO, as they call it, they will mobilize support for President Bola Ahmed Tinubu ahead of the 2027 election. Now, this does a number of things. Now, the TBU, if we may be very correct, they are orphans, their leader having, passed on to glory. President Muhammadu Buhari was regarded as a folk hero in the North. People have credited to him the capacity, the capability to mobilize up to about 13 million votes. Now, those 13 million votes in the North, in the light of divisions, frictions, complaints in the northern part of the country, will be useful to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. So symbolically, and even perhaps practically, if you go by the words of Makura and Tajuddin Abbas, they are saying that, look, we are solidly behind him. That should be reassuring for President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's political strategies. Well, beyond that, beyond the politics. So it's not people in the southeast joining President Tinubu. It's not, or the south-south. It's not only Wike, Minister of the FCT, mobilizing support. Now there is a group in the north that is countering, the objection to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. So you see, politics at the end of the day is about strategy. And I think that Bola Ahmed Tinubu's strategies have already, started the process of focusing on their assignment. Now, the president, talking to them, made a number of points. He said Nigeria is no longer borrowing, that we are making a lot from, non-oil revenue, which between 2024 and now has increased by about 40.5%. Revenue collection from the various agencies, whether customs and all of that, also
Good.
revenue has grown between 2024 by about and 2025 by about 16%. In other words, the revenue collection agencies are doing their work, and the economy, the president says, is in good stead. In other words, there is more coming from internally generated revenue rather than borrowing. It also says something that the president is boasting, beating his chest, that his government is committed to fiscal discipline. Maybe under his watch, we will not have ways and means, which was something that was abused under President Buhari's dispensation, and for which nobody has been punished, which was an illegal act, which was a violation of the CBN Act of 2007, and for which nobody has been properly held responsible. But we take it that under President Tinubu, there will be no, abuse of ways and means. So they are having income from taxes, customs, non-oil is doing well. The question to ask about revenue is that this revenue, you say you are not borrowing from domestic banks. So domestic banks, we have resources to support the private sector. But we have bonds. So that's also a form of borrowing. We are also saying we will go to the World Bank and IMF, we will draw on our special rights with IMF and World Bank. So when President Tinubu says we are not borrowing, no, he's telling half truth, half of the story, because the government is still borrowing. And okay, the revenue that you say you are getting in terms of IGR, why are we not seeing increased performance in terms of the impact, on the lives of the people? So the ordinary people will raise questions. So you are talking revenue. You are collecting tax. What are we gaining from it? The president, as I begin to summarize, also talked about food security. He says government is committed. He was telling his TBU CPC Congress for Political Change, which became a political party in 2009, which linked up with the AC, Action Congress of Nigeria, ACN, in 2023 to become the APC, which is now the party in power. He was telling them food security. Okay, food security. One newspaper, I think it's the Daily Trust, wrote a story the other day that the tractors that our friend and classmate in the United States, the Belarus man, brought from Belarus, now that those tractors have not been mobilized. They are not there. So these tractors are just sitting down. President Tinubu went to Brazil 2 times. The major issue was about agriculture. So when are we going to get the results? He says we are working on zones in the regions. We know Lagos, Zamfara, and some other states. Niger State, they are coming together to do agriculture. Where is the result? It's not just about talking. We just want President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to walk the talk, particularly in the area of agriculture, food security, which everybody says, will create jobs, will mobilize activity, will lead to concrete productivity. No, enough of the talk. We want action in that regard.
We should deal with the fact that budget performance is quite very low as we speak. Most of the capital projects are not being funded. President Tinubu even bragging and say, okay, yes, 13 trillion of the revenue and all of that, okay, out of the non-oil revenue. When you check this budget, that money itself has not even covered the loan components, the loan servicing component, because the loan servicing component of this budget is 14 trillion. Then you now have the non-debt or the non-loan components, which is sort of like your recurring expenditure. Then you now have the capital component, which is about 23 trillion. The Minister of Health was complaining the other day that we hardly get, 10 to 15%. In fact, people are complaining about how well are these, budgetary allocations funded. So there are many big problems on ground. And that's why I was taken aback when it was triumphant. Anyway, they've clarified, so I think I've forgiven them on that. We still have a very big problem. The Minister of Health came out and said something interesting recently, that GDP per capita on health is $120. That out of that, the government only provides $30. So it shows you that it is only $30. Can you multiply $30 by 1,550 and do me the numbers? That's how much the government is providing for each citizen for health. So we have huge budget shortfalls. And you see, the fact that the Americans have taken most of their funds away, USAID, and there's donor fatigue in the world, is beginning to impact on us. So this is not the time for President Tinubu to try to do this and beat his chest. No. Yes, we see some signs, but we are not there yet. And the 41 trillion, we are still a long way away. And we still have a 13 trillion deficit to be able to borrow to be able to cushion the effect of the budget. And we are running multiple concurrent budget cycles. And as it is, budget not balanced. And those are the problems on ground that we need to look at. But I know he's a politician, so he will deal with politicking. He will say that a lot of things is happening. As regards PDP and Wike, like I said before, it's obvious that Wike is the god of PDP. And in fact, I think all PDP members, including people like Dr. Bartolome, stare the honestness this morning. People like that, they should go and bow down for Wike.